Joining us now, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger of Virginia. She served as a case officer with the CIA before running for office. Congresswoman, it's good to see you this morning. A lot in this comprehensive report. What jumps out to you?
So a couple things jump out at me when I read this, again, as a former intelligence officer, now as a member of Congress. In reading this report, I think every American and certainly every elected official should be angered and horrified at the clear attempt by the Russians at the direction of Vladimir Putin to influence our elections, to influence the American people, and to sow division in our society and in our country, and to create distrust in the very foundation of our democracy, which is our electoral system.
Are you surprised, Congresswoman, how easy it was, again, for the Russian government to find stooges, forgive the term, I'm sure you have a more specific or a more artful one, to work with the Russian government to help undermine Joe Biden? People like Rudy Giuliani, even some members of the United States Senate.
I'm not surprised at all. And what we see in this unclassified report is that a key finding, I believe it's key judgment number 2, is that the Russians endeavored to find individuals who would carry this message, who would give it validity, who would give it purpose, who would give it strength. And those individuals are members of the United States government, members of the United States media, people with a voice and a position of power. When they convey these Russian propaganda ideas, people listen, and this is dangerous. And I think that we are all now clearly on notice that this is happening. It has happened for years, right? We knew it after the 2016 election, and arguably people kept carrying the water for Russian propaganda. But this report makes plain that anyone who is continuing to push these Russian-backed information is doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin. And my hope and expectation is that everyone will be very, very careful to not do that into the future. It's un-American and it's frankly dangerous.
Congresswoman, as you point out, after 2016, the country was up in arms about what Russia was able to do in terms of influencing the election. We had hearings about it. Congress took up this effort to make our elections safer. They were from a technical standpoint. But how does Russia get its nose back into our elections again in 2020, despite all that alarm we had after 2016?
I think in talking about hacking of elections and talking about attacking our voting systems, that's a pretty straightforward element for people to understand. And so I think that we did take significant measures, or at least people understood that threat. But the idea that there would be messages seeded into our society, that there would be divisions that would be, preyed upon, that there would be this effort to just bit by bit degrade the trust that people have in our electoral system, which we saw the result of what happens on January 6th, when people believe that something is wrong in the electoral system. We see something as outrageous and horrifying as a violent insurrection at the United States Capitol. And so now moving forward, I hope that this report gives people a better understanding of what influence operations are, and we should find them just as angering as attempts to actually hack the basic infrastructure of our elections, because it is an attempt to change our efforts, our engagement as Americans, and we need to be on guard against it.
Okay, Congresswoman, I have 2 questions then. What do we do about it, let alone guard against it? And also curious what your thoughts are about President Biden's language toward Vladimir Putin. It's such a departure from President Trump, who seemed to be afraid of him. Biden saying that he tells him straight to his face, I don't think you have a soul, and answering point blank, yes, I think he's a killer. What do you think the impact of that is?
I think he's calling a spade a spade. We're dealing with Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer. The United States government, certainly anyone who's spent time in the intelligence field, has a pretty strong understanding of who Vladimir Putin is, what motivates him. And it's, I think, heartening to see a president who will stand up to an authoritarian dictator or authoritarian government leader who's attempting to undermine the faith that the American people have in our system of governance, who is utilizing influence campaigns to undermine a political party, our political process. And so I'm heartened to see that we have a president who will stand up to the likes of Vladimir Putin, who will assert the strength of the United States and stand up for the very sanctity of our elections and the right of the American people to make a decision based on facts and true information.
Mike Barnicle.
So, Congresswoman, following up on Mika's line of questioning, we have known, or we've been told for several years now, that Vladimir Putin seethes with resentment over the collapse of the Soviet Union and the perceived lack of respect that he and his country and the people around him have received from the global countries, in the world. But now we have a man, maybe the wealthiest man in the world, Putin, running a country that is skilled at cyber warfare. What do we do to cope with this, to combat this? I mean, we don't want to go back and forth with shutting off people's water supplies and shutting down electricity grids, do we? What do we do to cope with this huge menace on the world stage?
I think the first step is recognizing the scope of what the menace actually is. I think this report is valuable in outlining Russian intentions, Russian efforts, and clearly stating that the Russian government, utilizing foreign actors, has brought ideas and division and preyed on sociopolitical challenges that we as a nation face and should endeavor to address, that they have preyed on those divisions in an effort to divide. The report clearly lays out that Russia sees a weakened United States of America as a benefit to Russia. Right. So they're seeking to weaken us by sowing this division, by creating this lack of belief in our system of government. And the first thing we need to do to counter it is to have every elected official from the local level on up recognizing the threat of these propaganda efforts and ensuring that we are doing everything we can to speak clearly and truthfully about this incoming threat of disinformation and propaganda, and that we are taking real steps to ensure that the American people know that our system of government is good, that our elections are free and fair and safe, and we need to make clear that we understand the threat that comes from Russia, and follow the president's lead, frankly, in being strong in denouncing it.
All right, Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.